Counselor Vethra stared at her screen for the third hour straight. The numbers did not make sense. As a Selinary, her species was famous across the galaxy for their perfect logic and flawless memory. They never made mistakes with data. Yet here she was, looking at an impossible error. The Galactic Combat Registry was the most important military database in known space. Every species had to report enemy combatants they encountered in battle. This information helped the Galactic Arbitration Council understand threats and maintain peace. The system had worked perfectly for thousands of years, but something was very wrong with the human entries. Vethra pulled up the statistics again. Humans had been part of galactic civilization for over 200 years. They had participated in dozens of conflicts across multiple sectors. Their military presence was well documented through ship movements, colony defense records, and alliance reports. Yet when she looked at the actual combat reports, humans were barely mentioned. The numbers were impossibly low. Based on their known military activity, there should have been at least 50,000 detailed reports about human combatants. Instead, there were less than 300. She ran the calculation again. Her mind worked through every variable. The gap was not a small error. It was massive. Someone, or many someones, were not reporting their encounters with human soldiers. At first, Vethra assumed it was a technical problem. Perhaps the data had been corrupted during a system transfer. Maybe there was a filing error that sent human reports to the wrong category. These things happen sometimes, even in the most advanced systems. But when she dug deeper, she found something that made her 4 hearts beat faster. The missing reports came from dozens of different species. They spanned 2 centuries of conflicts. And most disturbing of all, many of the officers who should have filed these reports belonged to species with perfect memory. Species like her own. Vethra decided to investigate personally. She requested a meeting with Admiral Crixall, a decorated commander of the Vorthani fleet. The Vorthani were famous throughout the galaxy for one thing above all else. They could not forget. Their brains physically stored every experience in perfect detail. A Vorthani could recall a conversation from 50 years ago. Word for word. Admiral Crixall had commanded forces in the Fringe Wars, where human mercenaries were known to operate. His reports mentioned fighting against various enemies in great detail, but there was not a single mention of humans. Despite intelligence confirming their presence in 3 of his battles, the Admiral agreed to meet her at his estate on Orthax Prime. He was old now. His scales faded to a gentle gray, but his eyes were still sharp. He welcomed her politely and offered her traditional Vorthani tea. "I understand you have questions about my service record," he said calmly. "I am happy to assist the Council in any way." Vethra activated her recording device. "Admiral, I am investigating some gaps in the combat registry. Specifically, I am looking at the Battle of Nexus Station in Cycle 4421. Intelligence reports confirm that human fighters were present, yet your official report does not mention them." Something changed in the Admiral's eyes. It was subtle, but Vethra noticed it immediately. For just a moment, the old warrior looked uncomfortable. "Nexus Station was a complex engagement," he said slowly. "Many different forces were involved. Perhaps I simply focused on the primary threats." Vethra leaned forward. "Admiral, with respect, you are Vorthani. Your species cannot forget. You remember every detail of every battle you ever fought. How can you not recall fighting humans?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. His claws tapped against his teacup. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost afraid. "Counselor, there are some things that are better left out of official records. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you." Vethra pressed harder. "Admiral, the combat registry exists for a reason. Complete information helps us prepare for future conflicts, helps us protect our people. Why would you deliberately leave out information about an enemy?" Crixall stood up and walked to his window. Outside, the twin suns of Vorthax were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He did not look at her when he spoke. "When I was young, I believed that knowledge was always power, that understanding your enemy was the key to victory. I spent decades studying tactics, analyzing species. learning everything I could about those who might threaten the Confederacy. He turned to face her. Then I fought humans. And I learned that some enemies cannot be understood through analysis. Some enemies break every rule, ignore every prediction, and do things that logic says are impossible. What do you mean? The Admiral shook his head. I have said too much already. Go home, counselor. Close your investigation. Some questions are better left unanswered. Vethra returned to the council headquarters frustrated but more determined than ever. She reported her findings to her superior, Director Mulvik, expecting support for a deeper investigation. Instead, she received a warning. Drop this matter, Mulvik said firmly. It falls under operational sensitivity protocols. What protocols? I have never heard of any rule that allows officers to ignore reporting requirements. There are many things you have not heard of, counselor. Trust me when I tell you, this is not a path you want to walk. But Vethra was Salinary. Her species did not abandon puzzles. They solved them. That night, she accessed the classified military archives. It took her 3 hours to bypass the security locks, but her skills were excellent. She found what she was looking for in a forgotten corner of the database. A battle recording from the Arathis conflict. Marked as corrupted and scheduled for deletion, she ran recovery protocols on the file. Most of it was beyond saving, but she managed to extract a single frame of video. Just one image from the entire battle. It showed a Gorvani soldier, one of the most fearless warrior species in the galaxy. The Gorvani were biologically incapable of feeling fear. Their brain chemistry simply did not allow it. They were engineered for combat, built to face any threat without hesitation. But in this image, the Gorvani soldier's face showed something that should have been impossible. His eyes were wide. His mouth was open in a silent scream. Every muscle in his body was frozen in pure, absolute terror. And in the reflection of his eyes, Vethra could see what he was looking at, a human. Just one human, standing in the smoke and fire of battle. Vethra saved the image and deleted her access logs. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she sat in darkness, staring at that impossible expression of fear, and wondered what could make a fearless species afraid. She was going to find out. The medical station orbited, a quiet moon far from the main trade routes. It had no official name, only a number. Station 7 Gamma. Vethra had found references to it buried deep in military medical files. It was a rehabilitation center for veterans suffering from something called combat discontinuity syndrome. The condition was strange. Affected soldiers had gaps in their memories surrounding specific battles. They could remember everything before and after, but the combat itself was missing. Their minds had simply erased it. What caught Vethra's attention was that every single patient at Station 7 Gamma had one thing in common. They had all faced humans in combat. The journey took 4 days. When her shuttle finally docked at the station, she was greeted by Dr. Yenix, a Kethmari psychologist with gentle eyes and tired shoulders. The Kethmari were known as the galaxy's best healers of the mind. If anyone understood what was happening to these veterans, it would be her. Counselor Vethra, the doctor said with a small bow. I received your request. I must admit, I am surprised the council is finally taking interest in our patients. Finally, Vethra asked. Dr. Yenix led her down a long white corridor. We have been studying combat discontinuity syndrome for 60 years. In that time, we have sent hundreds of reports to the military and the council. Every single one has been ignored or classified. Why would they hide this? The doctor stopped at a window that looked into a peaceful garden. Several aliens of different species sat among the flowers, staring at nothing. Because admitting this condition exists would require admitting what causes it, and no one wants to talk about that. Vethra looked at the patients. Some of them had been among the finest military minds in the galaxy. Now they've sat in silence, broken in ways that no medicine could fix. I want to interview some of them, she said. I will allow it, but I must warn you. Pushing too hard can cause severe reactions. These patients have built walls in their minds for a reason. Breaking those walls is dangerous. The first patient was Commander Threx, a Gorvani tactician who had led 3 successful campaigns before his breakdown. His species was large and powerful, built for war. But the creature sitting across from Vethra looked small, somehow defeated. "Commander, thank you for speaking with me. I am investigating some irregularities in combat reports. I understand you served in sectors where human forces were active." Threx's massive hands began to tremble. "I served in many sectors. I fought many enemies. Can you tell me about the Battle of Crestfall?" Intelligence shows human mercenaries were present. The Gorvani closed his eyes. Sweat appeared on his thick skin. "I remember arriving at Crestfall. I remember leaving Crestfall. Between those 2 points there is nothing. Nothing at all. Shadows, feelings. Nothing solid." He opened his eyes, and Vethra saw something she never expected to see in a Gorvani. Tears. "They do not fight like other species, Counselor. They do not follow the rules of war. They fight like they have already accepted death. Like dying does not matter to them, as long as they take you with them." Vethra felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "I cannot explain it. My mind will not let me remember the details. But I remember the feeling. The absolute certainty that I was facing something I could not understand. Something that should not exist." The second patient was harder to interview. Intelligence Officer Miraset was Selinary, like Vethra. Her species did not lose memories. They did not forget. Yet here was proof that even the perfect Selinary mind could be broken. Miraset sat in her room, surrounded by mathematical equations written on every wall. She had been trying to solve something for years, trying to make sense of the senseless. "You want to know about humans?" Miraset said before Vethra could speak. "You want to understand why we do not report them?" "Yes." The older Selinary laughed bitterly. It was a horrible sound. "I was like you once. Brilliant. Confident. I believed that everything could be calculated. Every battle, every enemy, every outcome. Give me enough data, and I could predict anything." She walked to one of her walls and traced a finger along an equation. "I had complete data on the human squad I was assigned to analyze. Their training records. Their psychological profiles. Their equipment specifications. Everything what happened." Miraset turned to face her. Tears ran down her face, and Vethra felt shock. Selinary rarely cried. Their emotions were controlled, logical. They did not follow the data. I calculated every possible variable, every potential outcome, and they did none of them. They did things that made no logical sense. Sacrificed themselves to save wounded enemies, charged fortified positions with no hope of survival, laughed in situations where they should have been terrified. She grabbed Vethra's arm. They do not operate on logic, do you understand? They operate on something else, something our minds cannot process. Faith, hope, madness. I do not know what to call it. But my brain could not accept what I was seeing, so it simply stopped recording. Vethra left the interview shaken. She found Dr. Yenix waiting for her in the corridor. "You understand?" the doctor said quietly. "These patients did not lose their memories. Their minds actively rejected them. It is a survival mechanism. The brain decided that remembering was too dangerous, so it chose to forget. How is that possible? The mind protects itself however it can. And for many species, the only way to protect themselves from what they experienced was to erase it completely." As Vethra prepared to leave the station, a patient approached her. He was an elderly Draven, a species known for wisdom and long life. He had served as a combat historian, recording battles for future generations. "You are seeking answers," he said. "I can see it in your eyes. The same hunger for truth that I once had. Do you have answers?" The old Draven pressed a data chip into her hand. "Coordinates. A planet called Eratha 7. Go there if you want to understand." "What happened on Eratha 7? The historian's eyes grew distant. 40 humans. 12,000 of our finest soldiers. We thought it would be easy. We thought we understood them." He began to walk away, then stopped. "When you see what happened there, ask yourself a question. Would you want to put that in an official report? Would you want the galaxy to know what 40 humans can do when they decide they will not lose?" Vethra clutched the data chip tightly. She had more questions now than when she started. But she was closer to the truth. She could feel it. Eratha 7. Whatever happened there held the key to everything. She booked passage on the next available transport and began the long journey to a planet that should have been. Forgotten era, this -7 was beautiful. Green forests covered the hills. Clear rivers cut through wide valleys. Birds sang in trees that swayed in the gentle wind. It looked like a paradise, but Vethra knew what had happened here. Somewhere beneath this peaceful surface was a story that had been buried for decades. Her shuttle landed near a small building at the edge of a meadow. It was simple, made of local wood and stone. An old alien sat on the porch watching her approach. He was Gorvani like Commander Threx, but his scales had turned white with age. A walking stick rested against his chair. "General Ossic?" Vethra asked. "I knew someone would come eventually," the old general said. "I've been waiting a long time." Invited her inside and made tea. The house was simple, but comfortable. On the walls hung dozens of photographs showing soldiers and battles. A lifetime of war reduced to images in frames. "You want to know about the invasion?" Ossic said. It was not a question, as the records say almost nothing. A minor conflict quickly resolved, but I have learned enough to know that is not true. The general sipped his tea. "Would you like to walk with me? It is easier to tell the story where it happened." They left the house and walked into the forest. The trees were tall and old, their branches forming a canopy that blocked much of the sunlight. It was peaceful, quiet. 60 years ago, the Confederacy learned that humans had built a research station on this planet, Ossic began. It was a small facility, maybe 40 people. Scientists, engineers, a small security team. No military. What were they researching? Plants mostly. New medicines. Agricultural techniques. Nothing of military value. He shook his head slowly. We did not care what they were researching. We wanted to send a message. Show the humans that the Confederacy was not afraid of them. So we assembled an invasion force. How large? 12,000 soldiers. The finest troops in our fleet. State-of-the-art equipment. Experienced commanders. The old general's voice grew bitter. We thought it would be easy. 40 civilians against 12,000 warriors. We expected to have complete victory in a single day. They reached a clearing. In the center stood a stone monument. Names were carved into it. Human names. What happened? Vethra asked. Ossic stared at the monument. We landed 3 kilometers from the research station. Standard formation, textbook tactics. We expected the humans to surrender immediately. Instead, they disappeared. Disappeared. Into the forest. Into the hills. Into places we did not know existed. By the time we reached the station, it was empty. They had taken everything useful and vanished. He began walking again, and Vethra followed. We were not worried at first. 40 civilians hiding in the woods. We had thermal sensors, aerial drones, tracking equipment. We would find them in ours, but you did not. No, the general stopped beside a stream. This is where we lost our first patrol. 20 soldiers. Elite reconnaissance team. They crossed this stream and simply never came back. When we found them, they were alive but unable to move. The humans had used some kind of plant compound to paralyze them. A civilian research team created chemical weapons. They were botanists and chemists. They used what they knew. Ossic continued walking. That was the first sign that something was wrong. But we did not understand yet. We thought it was luck. For the next hour, the general walked Vethra through the forest, showing her locations where battles had taken place. But they were not normal battles. Here they collapsed a hillside onto our armored column. Used nothing but the forest itself as a weapon. Here they set traps that did not kill, but made sounds. Terrible sounds. Screaming that echoed through the night. Our soldiers could not sleep. Here we found a message written on rocks in our own language. It said, "We know you are afraid. We are not." Vethra listened with growing unease. This was psychological warfare. It was worse than that, Ossic said. It was perfect psychological warfare. They had no military training, but they understood fear better than any species I have ever encountered. They knew exactly how to break us. They reached another clearing. This one was larger, and the grass grew thick and green. But Vethra noticed that no birds sang here. Even nature seemed to remember what had happened. "This is where I lost my faith in logic," the general said quietly. We had surrounded a group of 8 humans. They were trapped in a cave with no way out. We had 200 soldiers, heavy weapons, complete tactical advantage. By every calculation, they should have surrendered. What did they do? They charged. 8 humans against 200 Gorvani warriors. They came out of that cave screaming battle cries and firing weapons they had built from stolen parts and forest materials. Osik closed his eyes. They killed 30 of us before we brought them down. In the last one, a woman with gray hair and a wounded leg kept fighting until her final breath. Why would they do that? They had no chance. That is the question that haunts me. That haunts everyone who fought here. The general opened his eyes. We asked prisoners later. The few we managed to capture, they said the same thing. We do not surrender. We do not give up. It is not in our nature. The campaign lasted 3 months. 40 humans against 12,000 soldiers. When it finally ended, Confederacy had lost nearly 200 dead and over 4,000 who would never be mentally fit for combat again. The humans had lost 31, but the numbers did not tell the real story. We won, Osik said. Technically. We killed most of them and captured the rest. But it did not feel like victory. It felt like we had survived something terrible. They returned to his house as the sun began to set. The general showed Vethra the memorial he had built behind his home. 9 simple stones, each carved with a human name. These are the ones I killed personally, he explained. I honor them because they taught me something I never learned in all my years of military training. What was that? That courage cannot be measured. That the will to survive is worth more than any weapon. That some beings will never accept defeat, no matter how impossible victory seems. He looked at Vethra with old, tired eyes. Would you put that in an official report? Would you tell the galaxy that 40 scientists defeated an army through nothing but pure determination? Would you want other species to know that humans can do the impossible simply because they refuse to believe it is impossible? Vethra had no answer. That is why we do not report them, Osik said. Because the truth is too frightening. Because admitting what happened here would mean admitting that all our technology, all our training, all our intelligence means nothing against an enemy who simply will not quit. That night, Vethra sat alone on the general's porch, staring up at unfamiliar stars. She understood now. The mystery was not about military secrets or political cover dash-ups. It was about fear. The smartest species in the galaxy were afraid of what they had seen, and their only defense was to pretend they had never seen it at all. But Vethra was not satisfied with silence. She had one more question to answer. Why did humans fight like this? What made them different from every other species in the galaxy? She needed to find out. Even if the answer terrified her, Vethra returned to the council headquarters with a complete report. She had documented everything. The interviews, the medical records, the true story of Arathis 7. She had spent weeks organizing the information into a clear and logical presentation. The truth deserved to be known. She expected praise, perhaps an award for her dedication. At the very least, acknowledgement that her investigation had uncovered something important. Instead, she was summoned to a meeting she did not know existed. 2. Council guards escorted her through corridors she had never seen before. They went deeper into the building than she knew was possible, past security checkpoints that required genetic scans and voice confirmation. Finally, they reached a door marked only with a symbol she did not recognize. "Enter," said a voice from inside. The room was large and circular, with seats arranged around a central platform. 7 figures sat in the shadows. Vethra recognized none of them, but she could see that each belonged to a different species. These were beings of great age and authority, leaders who preferred to remain unseen. One figure stepped forward into the light. He was ancient, his species unknown to Vethra. His skin was the color of old paper, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. "I am the Grand Arbiter," he said. "We are the Silent Council. We handle matters that cannot be discussed openly." "I have never heard of the Silent Council. That is by design." The Arbiter gestured for her to sit. "We have read your report, Counselor Vethra. It is thorough, accurate, and extremely dangerous." "Dangerous? I am simply documenting the truth. The truth is not always safe." The Arbiter began to pace slowly around the room. "Tell me, what do you think would happen if your report became public knowledge? If every species in the galaxy learned what you have learned?" Vethra considered the question. They would understand why humans are underreported. They would know about the psychological effects of facing human combatants. Yes. And what else? "I suppose some might become more afraid of humans. Others might see them as a threat that needs to be eliminated." "Exactly." The Arbiter stopped in front of her. "Your report could start a war. A real war with humanity. Is that what you want?" "No, of course not." "Then understand why this information must remain hidden." The Arbiter returned to the shadows and sat down. "We did not create this policy out of ignorance or cowardice. We created it because we learned through painful experience that knowledge about humans is itself dangerous." One of the other figures spoke. Her voice was soft but carried weight. "In the early years of human contact, several species attempted to create complete combat profiles on them. Detailed analyses of their tactics, psychology, and weaknesses. These profiles were meant to help us understand them. To give us an advantage? What happened?" Vethra asked. "Every species that completed a full analysis and engaged humans using that data lost catastrophically." Vethra felt confusion. "That makes no sense. Better information should lead to better results." The Arbiter leaned forward. "For any other species, you would be correct. But humans are different. They adapt. The moment they realize you have a strategy, they change. They become unpredictable on purpose. They treat your analysis as a challenge, not a guide." Another council member spoke, his voice deep and rumbling. "We created a perfect psychological profile of human fear responses. When we used it in battle, the humans identified our tactics within hours. They then deliberately displayed the opposite of their natural fear responses. Our soldiers became confused, unable to trust their training. We lost that engagement badly." "Humans are intelligent," the Arbiter continued. "But more than that, they are aware of their own psychology in ways other species are not. They can identify when they are being analyzed and consciously change their behavior. Fighting them is like fighting water. Every time you think you have grasped them, they flow through your fingers." Vethra struggled to process this information. "Then why not simply avoid conflict with them entirely?" "We try," the Arbiter said. "But the galaxy is large, and conflicts happen. When they do, we have learned that the safest approach is to know as little as possible." He stood and walked to a display screen. An image appeared, showing a galaxy map with human territories marked in blue. Humans discovered long ago that species were profiling them, and they began watching which species had the most detailed reports. What did they do? They targeted those species specifically. Not with violence necessarily, but with unpredictability. They made those species regret their analysis. They became more chaotic, more confusing, more terrifying to those who thought they understood them. The council member with the soft voice spoke again. "The galaxy eventually learned an important lesson. Ignorance about humans is not weakness. It is protection. If you do not know what they will do, they cannot use your knowledge against you." Vethra sat in silence for a long moment. Her entire investigation, everything she had learned, led to this strange conclusion. The smartest species in the galaxy had decided that not knowing was safer than knowing. "The memory loss," she said slowly. "The trauma responses. Some of that is real, but some of it is deliberate." "Correct," the Arbiter said. "Many veterans genuinely cannot remember their encounters with humans. But others choose not to remember. And the official policy of not reporting human combatants helps protect both groups. But surely this cannot continue forever. Eventually, someone will demand answers. Perhaps. But until then, we maintain the silence. The Arbiter looked at her with something like sympathy. You have a choice now, Counselor. You can join us in protecting this secret. Your investigation ends here. Your report is classified. And you continue your career with the knowledge you now possess. Or, or you can try to make this public. We will not stop you. But we will not protect you from the consequences either. Humans will learn that you have been studying them, and they will respond in whatever way they choose. Vethra felt a chill. She understood the threat, but it was not the Council threatening her. It was the simple truth. Humans would not ignore someone who tried to expose their secrets. Before she could respond, a door opened behind her. A council guard entered and whispered something to the Arbiter. His expression changed. It seems the decision may be taken from your hands, he said. There is a human ambassador here. He is asking to speak with you specifically. With me? How would he know I am here? The Arbiter smiled slightly. That is exactly the question you should be asking. Humans always seem to know things they should not. It is one of the many reasons we fear them. A guard escorted Vethra to a meeting room on the upper levels. She walked in a daze, her mind racing with possibilities. How had the humans learned about her investigation? How did they know she was here, in a building that was supposed to be secret? The meeting room was simple, with 2 chairs facing each other across a small table. A human male sat in one chair. He was middle-aged, with gray at his temples and kind lines around his eyes. He wore the simple uniform of a diplomatic officer. When Vethra entered, he stood and smiled warmly. Counselor Vethra, thank you for meeting with me. I am Ambassador David Chen. She sat down slowly, watching him carefully. How did you know about me? About my investigation? Chun's smile widened slightly. We have been wondering when someone would finally figure it out. Your species is famous for its intelligence. We always knew that eventually a Selenary would put the pieces together. So you were watching me. We are always watching. Not in a threatening way. We simply pay attention. He leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. You have learned a great deal about us in the past few weeks. About why the galaxy chooses not to report our soldiers. About what happened on Arathis 7. About the fear we create. Now I would like to offer you something the Silent Council cannot. Our side of the story. He spread his hands. Would you like to hear why we are the way we are? Vethra looked into his calm, patient eyes. She had come this far seeking truth. She could not stop now. Yes, she said. Tell me everything. Ambassador Chen poured 2 glasses of water and offered one to Vethra. His movements were calm and unhurried, as if they had all the time in the universe. You know, he began when we first made contact with the galaxy. We thought we were alone. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. When we finally met other species, we were excited. We wanted friends. That is not the reputation you have now, Vethra said carefully. No, it is not. Chen sighed. But we did not choose this reputation. It was forced upon us. He pulled up a holographic display, showing images of early human-alien contact. Trade stations. Diplomatic meetings. Humans and aliens shaking hands, making agreements. In the beginning, things went well. Humans are social creatures. We like meeting new people, learning about different cultures. We were eager to join galactic society. Images changed. Now they showed conflict. Ships burning. Soldiers fighting. Cities in ruins. But not everyone welcomed us. Some species saw us as weak, primitive, easy targets. They attacked our colonies, destroyed our ships, killed our people. Chen's voice remained calm, but Vethra could see something harder in his eyes. We tried diplomacy first. We always tried diplomacy first. But some species only understand strength. So you fought back. We did more than fight back. We survived. Against species that were older, stronger, and more advanced than us. We survived because of something they did not expect. What was that? Chen smiled. We refused to accept defeat. It is not in our nature. He stood and walked to the window. The city lights of the capital spread out below them, millions of beings going about their lives. On Earth, our home world survival was never guaranteed. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us constantly. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather. Every generation of humans had to fight to survive. And somewhere in that struggle, something changed in us. He turned to face her. We developed hope. Not the logical kind. Not that we have calculated our chances and they are favorable kind. We developed the kind of hope that says we will survive because we refuse to die. Vethra thought about what she had seen. The terrified Gorvani soldier. The broken veterans at Station 7 Gamma. The 40 scientists on Arathis 7 who had fought 12,000 soldiers to a standstill. That is why you fight the way you do, she said slowly. Not because you do not fear death, but because you fear giving up more. Exactly. Chen returned to his seat. Every species thinks we are crazy, that we take risks no logical being would take. But to us, surrendering feels worse than dying. Quitting feels like a betrayal of everyone who struggled before us. The galaxy finds this terrifying.
I know.
And honestly, I understand why. Chen folded his hands on the table. We terrify ourselves sometimes. The things we are capable of when we are pushed to our limits. The sacrifices we are willing to make. It is not always pretty. Vethra thought about this for a long moment. You said you wanted to tell me your side of the story. I appreciate the explanation, but I still do not understand something. Why do you allow the silence? Why let the galaxy pretend they have never encountered your soldiers? Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. When we first discovered that species were not reporting encounters with us, we were angry. We thought they were trying to hide evidence of our victories, making us look weaker than we are. But you changed your mind? We realized something important. The silence protects both sides. He leaned forward. Think about what would happen if every encounter with human soldiers was fully documented. Every tactic analyzed, every victory studied. What would the galaxy do with that information? They would try to counter it, develop new weapons, new strategies. Yes, and we would have to respond. We would have to become more creative, more unpredictable, more terrifying. It would be an endless escalation with both sides becoming more extreme. Zethra understood now. The silence prevents that escalation, creates space for peace. If the galaxy does not fully understand us, they do not feel the need to completely defeat us. And if we are not constantly being analyzed and countered, we do not need to become monsters to survive. He spread his hands. It is not a perfect solution, but it works. The galaxy fears us enough to leave us alone, but not so much that they try to destroy us. We are mysterious enough to be respected, but not so strange that we cannot trade and cooperate. A balance, Vethra said.
Exactly.
A strange, fragile balance built on ignorance and fear, but also on hope. The hope that someday the galaxy will understand us well enough that they do not need to fear us anymore. Vethra sat in silence, processing everything. Her investigation had started as a search for hidden data. It had become something much larger, a glimpse into the soul of a species that the galaxy had fundamentally misunderstood. What happens now? She asked. To my report. To me. That is up to you. Chen smiled gently. We will not try to silence you. That would go against everything we believe. If you want to publish your findings, we will not stop you. But you would prefer I did not. I would prefer you understood. Understood that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Not because the truth is too dangerous, but because the mystery itself has value. Vethra looked at the human ambassador. In his eyes, she saw something she had not expected. Not madness or aggression. Just a quiet certainty. A faith that tomorrow would be better than today, if only they could survive long enough to see it. She made her decision. 3 months later, Vethra stood before a classroom of young Salinary students. She had left the intelligence division and taken a teaching position at the academy. It felt right. A new beginning. Professor, one student asked, I noticed that humans are not included in our combat analysis curriculum. Why is that? Vethra smiled. It was a new expression for her. Something she had learned from Ambassador Chen. She found she liked it, because some knowledge is more powerful when it remains a question rather than an answer. The students looked confused, but she did not explain further. Some lessons could only be learned through experience. After class, she walked to the observation deck that overlooked the main shipping lanes. A human trade vessel was passing through Salinary space, its lights blinking peacefully against the darkness. She watched it for a long moment. Her final report had been simple. 3 sentences that said everything and nothing at the same time. Human combatants remain unclassifiable. I recommend continued strategic ambiguity, not because they cannot be understood, but because understanding them requires becoming like them, and the galaxy is not ready for that. The Silent Council had accepted her report without comment. Ambassador Chen had sent her a brief message of thanks, and the galaxy continued as it always had. With humans remaining an unsolved mystery at its heart, Vethra raised her hand as the human ship passed. A small gesture. A greeting between strangers who might someday become friends. On the ship, a human crew member happened to be looking out the window. She saw the Salinary standing alone on the observation deck, her hand raised in greeting. Without thinking, she waved back. It was a small moment. Meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But somewhere in that simple exchange was the seed of something larger. The possibility that fear could become curiosity. That mystery could become understanding. That 2 species, divided by everything, might someday find common ground. That was the human gift, Vethra realized. Not their unpredictability or their refusal to surrender. It was their endless, impossible hope that tomorrow would be different than today, and perhaps. She thought as she walked home through the quiet streets that hope was contagious. Perhaps it always had been.